So yous want me to tell an old Halloween tale? Well, I got a pretty good one for you, 'cause it's one I lived through. Now, most ghost stories has a ghost in it. This one has two. Now, when I was just a young boy growing up in Lick Branch Holler, there's a couple that lived in a shack right down from us. There's the Lewises. And one day, Mr. Lewis went off a hunting like most men always did in that holler. He took off and he was gone, and he's supposed to be back. From what I understand, he's supposed to be back that evening, and he just didn't show up. So his wife, Miss Lewis, was mighty concerned about him, as you can imagine, and so she come and asked around all the neighbors to see if anybody had saw Mr. Lewis. And of course, nobody did. We all just expected him to turn up. He had a little bit of a tendency to drink, so we thought he might have just got liquored up and be back home in the morning, but that didn't happen. So the next morning she come back again, and she was more concerned than ever, begging and pleading, has anybody seen Mr. Lewis? And nobody had seen him. Well, another day come and went. No sign of him. And all the fellas, and young and old up in that holler, went looking for him, and they didn't turn up nothing. Not one thing, like he just vanished into thin air. So 2 days turned into 3, and they kept going out and searching and searching and searching, and then after a couple of days, there got to be less of them that went, and less, and eventually the last party went out looking for him, and they kind of just gave up on ever seeing him again, I reckon. But Widow Lewis, as she became known, she never gave up. She sat out on the porch in a rocking chair, just looking, and just a rocking, nervous rock. Looking, anytime she heard something, her head would turn in that direction, hoping and praying it was Mr. Lewis. They never did show up, and then days turned into weeks. Every day, she'd be out there from the morning until the evening. I don't reckon I ever even seen her eat. I don't know what she did. She just kept on looking for her husband. And they didn't have no kids, and they was about all each other had. So she was taking it mighty hard, as you can expect. And she rocked, and the months turned into years. And I guess, I don't know if she gave up or just become a habit, but she just kept on doing. She just kept on rocking and rocking every day. Well, a few years went by, and she passed away. She wasn't a very old woman, but a lot of people say she grieved herself to death. I reckon that's probably true. 'Cause she fell off to skin and bones, and she didn't really have nothing to say or to anybody. She just had a distant look in her eyes all the time, like she was already in another world. So they found her dead in the rocking chair. That's really no surprise, as much time as she spent in it. And they took her, and she was buried. And there never was no hiding her hair of Mr. Lewis. He never did turn up. Nobody knows what happened to him. You only guess if he fell into a cave, or he got eaten by a wild animal, a bear, Cody or what, we don't know what happened to him. And they never found bone, hair, or piece of clothing, nothing. He just disappeared for good. And then as Witter Lewis passed away, and their shack just fell into ruin shortly after, because nobody's there keeping nothing up. So I just sat there empty. But for years and years up to this day, I reckon, there have been all kinds of people out in the woods hunting or hiking or just out walking a dog or whatever, and I hear in the distance, they'll hear footsteps, and I've heard people say they heard a man's voice out there hollering, help me, help me. But they never can find him. Never does show up anywhere. Just over and over again, help me, somebody help me. And it sounds awful desperate and urgent, but nobody can ever track the voice down. He gets you lost in the woods, and if you ain't careful, you don't know your way back. You may not make it back yourself. Now, for her part, and I heard this myself, and a couple of my sisters heard it too, but they would be deep in the night. You'd hear it rocking chair, just rocking away over the hill. It's rocking back and forth slowly. So we reckon Mrs. Lewis, or Witter Lewis, never did give up even after she gone. She kept a hoping and a praying that he'd come home. And I reckon she's probably still, her spirit's still sitting there today, just a waiting and a looking and a hoping and a praying for a man that ain't a coming back. It's a sad story, but that's the way it was. And, back then they just wasn't sophisticated to find people, and sometimes it just happened. Somebody just, it's like they fell off the face of the earth, never be seen or heard from again. So I don't know what happened to him. I don't even have a guess. He could have, who knows what could happen. He could have run away for all we know, but he just didn't leave no trace, nothing left at all. But buddy, I tell you what, when I'd hear that old rocking chair, it would send a chill down my spine. And I never did like walking by that house. I didn't like looking at it. I wished it could just go away, but it wasn't theirs to do nothing with, so it just sat there empty and waiting and lonely. It was just as sad as Witter Lewis herself. And I don't know if it's still there or not. Eventually got covered up because Mother Nature likes to reclaim her own land, so eventually as brush and ivies and kudzu and all that comes took it over, and just there wasn't nothing much left to be seen, but we knew it was still there, just sitting and awaiting, just like Witter Lewis herself, just sitting and awaiting and hoping and a praying. But yeah, it was my experiences with the ghost myself, I guess, with the spirit world or whatever. I don't know what to make of it.